I never realized how much a single condescending remark could cost someone until I watched my former boss destroy her entire life over a glass of cheap champagne. We were sitting on a high-end rooftop patio celebrating her recent promotion, when she leaned across the table and told me I lacked the edge to ever lead this company. She laughed, completely unaware that her words had just turned a loyal employee into her worst nightmare. That woman was Chloe, a newly appointed chief operating officer who secured her title through her marriage to the company founder rather than actual merit. For over 6 years, I had quietly managed the entire department, pulling unpaid overtime and building the very infrastructure she was now taking credit for. She viewed me as a harmless corporate fixture, someone too safe and predictable to ever pose a threat to her new kingdom. If you enjoy stories about arrogant bosses getting exactly what they deserve, take a moment to subscribe to the channel right now. Your support keeps this narrative engine running and ensures we can keep bringing you the ultimate tales of workplace justice. Now, let us return to the exact moment Chloe realized she had pushed the wrong person way too far. I did not scream, throw my drink, or cause a scene in front of the executive team. Instead, I calmly reached into my bag, pulled out my official 2-week resignation notice, and slid it across the table with a pleasant smile. Chloe froze, her arrogant smirk instantly vanishing as she stared at the paper in utter disbelief, demanding to know if I was actually serious about walking away. She genuinely believed my sudden departure was an act of surrender, completely failing to realize I had already spent months archiving her worst professional secrets. My digital exit trunk was packed with internal messages, altered financial reports, and deleted human resources complaints that she thought had vanished forever. I was not just quitting a toxic job, I was quietly pulling the pin on a massive corporate grenade. For years, I had been the invisible force keeping the entire operation afloat while executives took the credit. I was the one who drafted their presentations, corrected their major financial blunders, and saved massive client accounts from total disaster. Chloe assumed she could easily replace me with a younger, cheaper assistant who used trendy buzzwords, completely underestimating the sheer amount of leverage I held. My final Thursday at the office arrived with an eerie, calculated stillness that regular coworkers completely misunderstood. People walked by my desk to hand me parting gifts and wish me luck on my next chapter, thinking I was heading into a peaceful retirement. In reality, I was spending my last hours downloading gigabytes of unredacted payroll discrepancies and fraudulent vendor contracts into a secure personal drive. I was not stealing company property. I was simply securing the undeniable proof of my own labor and their extensive corruption. These documents proved that the recent corporate cost-cutting measures were actually a massive cover-up for executive overspending. Once the final file finished transferring, I placed a call to a high-profile attorney named Valerie, who specialized in high-stakes corporate divorces and brutal legal separations. Valerie picked up the phone immediately, instantly recognizing that my situation involved a volatile mix of marital misconduct and corporate fraud. While she began sharpening her legal strategy, I spent my remaining time gathering internal passwords, network access dates, and specific timeline logs. I also scheduled final exit interviews with compliance and risk management, ensuring my quiet voice would leave a permanent mark on their records. During those private meetings, I carefully dropped subtle hints about recent structural shifts without ever pointing fingers directly. The compliance analysts eagerly took detailed notes, completely unaware that they were providing me with validation for the exact timeline I was building. People love to share workplace gossip when they think you are already out the door, and I absorbed every single piece of information. The most critical piece of the puzzle involved a contact hidden in my phone under a completely fabricated name. It belonged to Adrian, the company co-founder and Chloe's husband, who had always respected my work ethic during previous corporate crises. I initiated a brief, silent call to his personal line just to confirm the connection, letting the heavy silence speak volumes before hanging up to finalize my grand strategy. On my very last afternoon, the department hosted a mandatory farewell lunch in the main glass conference room. Chloe stood in the center of the space like a game show host, wearing an incredibly expensive designer suit and flashing a completely artificial smile. The grocery store cake they ordered had my name spelled correctly for once, which felt like a parting insult after 6 years of dedicated service. The junior executives gave incredibly generic speeches that they had clearly put together in the elevator on the way up. They praised my ability to keep the office organized and always having snacks available, completely ignoring the multi-million-dollar accounts I had personally saved. They spoke about my tenure as if I were a harmless ghost, entirely oblivious to the fact that the ghost was currently haunting their system. Chloe took the microphone to deliver a backhanded compliment, publicly calling me the most predictable and forgettable asset the company had ever seen. The room erupted into polite, forced laughter, while I took a slow sip of water and maintained my composure. She then handed me a cheap envelope containing a $50 restaurant gift card, sealing her own fate with a final wink of pure condescension. As I rode the elevator down for the final time, I used my phone to activate 3 separate digital triggers I had hidden deep within the company network. These were not malicious viruses, but rather hidden monitoring files embedded in the project directories Chloe accessed daily. The moment she opened them, the system would automatically log her exact location, protocol address, and real-time screen activity for future review. My plan relied heavily on a major public relations disaster from the previous year that Adrian had desperately tried to contain. While Chloe was away on a luxury wellness retreat, I stayed up for 2 straight days fixing a massive campaign blunder that threatened to bankrupt the firm. Adrian never forgot that I saved his family legacy, which is why he responded to my encrypted text message within minutes. We met at a secluded coffee shop on the edge of the city, far away from the prying eyes of corporate headquarters. I slid a thick manila folder across the table, containing an extensively indexed document I called the Chloe Ledger. It meticulously detailed shadow vendor payments, unauthorized bonuses, and massive corporate funds routed directly to personal accounts under the guise of wellness reimbursements. Adrian stared at the financial evidence in absolute silence, watching his carefully constructed marriage dissolve with every single page he flipped. He looked up at me with an expression of pure defeat, asking how long I had been sitting on this explosive information. I looked him dead in the eye and explained that I did not want revenge. I simply wanted the leverage required to protect myself. He immediately called Valerie, confirming that she was now officially representing him in both his corporate restructuring and his impending divorce. Just like that, the protective wall Chloe thought she had built around her position suffered a catastrophic breach. Within 48 hours, the subtle digital trap I set began causing strange, inexplicable glitches across her personal administrative accounts. Her shared calendars refused to sync, her priority email threads vanished, and her presentations suddenly reverted to older versions containing her unedited notes. She began panicking, berating the internal tech support team, and demanding to know why the system felt like it was actively turning against her. She had absolutely no idea that my network of allies across the IT department were simply looking the other way. On Monday morning, the true storm finally made landfall when an anonymous submission appeared in the Executive Human Resources portal. It contained 7 comprehensive data files, an encrypted folder, and a crystal-clear screen recording of Chloe ordering staff to bypass financial compliance. The tracking data perfectly matched her personal office computer, leaving absolutely no room for her to claim intellectual property theft or user error. The board of directors received the file with an urgent warning, and the investigation was launched before Chloe even arrived at the office. She walked into the building wearing a solid white outfit, completely convinced that the recent system errors were just incompetent interns. She had no clue that the compliance team had already canceled their morning meetings to review her entire employment history. The final blow landed when Adrian walked through the front doors without his security badge, carrying a certified legal envelope. He bypassed the reception desk entirely, marching straight into the Human Resources office to personally deliver the formal divorce filing and financial misconduct charges. The entire building began buzzing with intense panic the moment he exited the room and left the premises. Chloe's assistant eventually delivered a printed copy of the legal separation notice, causing the confident chief operating officer to turn completely pale. She stormed into the Human Resources department, screaming that she had blackballed Valerie's firm from ever doing business with the company years ago. The director simply looked up and informed her that the board had officially approved their compliance contract weeks prior. By mid-afternoon, Chloe was completely locked out of the financial database. Her executive expense accounts were frozen, and her calendar was entirely wiped. She discovered a single file left on her desktop labeled Legacy Access, containing her own digital signature on every piece of incriminating evidence. She frantically demanded a system diagnostic, but the technicians dryly informed her that the data showed absolutely no signs of external manipulation. The board members gathered in the main room, informing a defensive Chloe that a full forensic audit had been officially initiated regarding her expense anomalies. She slammed her hands on the table, screaming that the entire investigation was a desperate witch hunt led by jealous colleagues. The chairman quietly pointed to the active recording device on the table, instantly draining the remaining color from her face. I watched the entire empire crumble from the comfort of my new apartment, which was located miles away from that toxic corporate tower. I had already accepted a high-paying executive position with their primary competitor, featuring a signing bonus larger than my previous 2 years of salary combined. Valerie called to confirm that Chloe had been placed on immediate administrative leave and stripped of all digital access. Reports surfaced that Chloe completely destroyed her private office in a fit of rage before being escorted out by building security. Adrian had already moved his belongings out of their shared home, leaving nothing behind but the revised asset division paperwork on the kitchen counter. The business blogs spent the rest of the week dissecting the sudden downfall of a once powerful executive who thought she was untouchable. When Chloe finally returned to the office weeks later to collect her remaining personal belongings, the entire atmosphere of the building had transformed. Her name had been completely scrubbed from the glass doors, replaced by a permanent brushed steel plaque for the new compliance division. She sat in the reception chair with her strings completely cut, staring at the floor as her corporate legacy vanished into thin air. Late that evening, as she sat alone in her empty luxury condominium, her phone registered a single new voicemail from an unlisted number. She played the recording and heard my calm, steady voice telling her that she was completely right about me not being executive material. I paused for a brief moment before adding that I was actually something much worse, followed by a sudden, permanent dial tone. Sometimes the most devastating move you can make against an arrogant opponent is to simply document their arrogance and wait for the perfect moment. True power is never built on shortcuts, and an inflated ego will never survive a meticulous mind that keeps the receipts. Thank you for listening to this story, and make sure to subscribe so you never miss the next corporate breakdown.